You are live. Welcome to the Shoy Show. Making enhancements over here because now I'm standing, and that's what I prefer. Okay, I prefer to stand. I don't like sitting. Sitting sucks. I don't know how people do shows sitting for hours on end. Can't do it. I can't. So I got myself a stand-up desk. And you know what we're talking today? We're talking about why the US taxpayer is helping support the yen. Now, the United States is spending billions of dollars to help support the Japanese yen. And why should an ordinary American care? Because this is connected to your mortgage, your credit cards, your taxes, and the value of your money. The yen recently approached its weakest level in roughly 40 years. That doesn't mean that you just go travel to Japan. I'm asking the question, we are asking the question, why are we buying the yen? Why are we spending our tax dollars to prop up their currency? Now, Japan and the United States responded by entering the currency market and buying the yen. A photographer captured a notepad near Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reading, "Buy Japanese yen, $5 to $10 billion." That's this image here. Pretty cool to see that someone's actually taking notes. But again, why would we do this? So let's get into it. Japan has spent more than $36 billion of its own money during Friday's operation to prop up its currency. The intervention helped move the exchange rate from nearly 164 yen per dollar to around 155 before the yen gave back some of those gains. President Trump said America participated because Japan is our friend. That may be part of it, but Japan also holds approximately $1.14 trillion in U.S. Treasury securities. That makes Japan the largest foreign national holder of American government debt. And when the federal government spends more than it collects in taxes, it borrows the difference by selling Treasury securities. Japan has purchased more than $1 trillion of that debt. So what happens if Japan needs large amounts of cash to protect its currency? It could sell some of those American treasuries. If Japan starts unloading treasuries, bond prices could fall and interest rates could rise. That's what the US government is scared of. Here's President Trump on the matter. Yeah, we're always there for Japan when. So here's Trump.
Financial benefit. Because we have a good relationship with Japan. We're very strong, very, very strong financially. They have a weakening yen, and they wanted a little bit of help, and we're always there for Japan. Japan's been very good to us, with the exception, of course, of Pearl Harbor. They were not good. Financial benefit. Financial benefit. It's also good for the world economy. But we make, like when we did with Argentina, like I criticized, we made $25 billion on that deal. On Venezuela, we make hundreds of billions of dollars. I make good deals. Intel.
Well, it's a financial benefit because, again, if interest rates rise, then that's bad for the American consumer. So we have to protect the Japanese yen because they own so much of our debt, and we don't want them selling our debt so that they can raise money to buy down their own currency. That's the way this all works. That's how it's all connected. So instead of seeing mortgage rates go up or increasing the cost of car loans and business loans, the American government stepped in, used our money to buy their yen, and mitigate this risk. And who pays the government's interest bill? The taxpayer. The United States is helping Japan support the yen, partly because America does not want Japan selling its treasury holdings and pushing our borrowing costs even higher. So yes, we are helping Japan, but we are also protecting ourselves. The United States reportedly sold euros from its reserves and used those euros to buy yen. This was not Congress taking another $10 billion from income tax collections and mailing it to Japan. The government exchanged one reserve asset for another. Before the operation, it owned euros. After the operation, it owned more yen. If the yen rises, the United States could make money here, but if it falls, the government could take a loss. The public ultimately carries that financial risk. Japan was able to use a federal trade reserve. Japan was also able to use a Federal Reserve facility to temporarily exchange its treasury securities for dollars. Japan receives dollar funding without permanently selling those bonds. The transaction is collateralized and must be reversed. But it still means the American financial system is supplying emergency liquidity to a foreign government. Why was the yen falling so badly? Part of the explanation is the yen carry trade. Interest rates remain higher in the United States than in Japan. Investors can borrow yen cheaply, convert that money into dollars, and invest in higher yielding American assets like stocks. But converting yen into dollars means selling yen. When that happens on a massive scale, like we're seeing for the last 20 years, the Japanese currency weakens. That creates problems for Japanese consumers because Japan imports energy, food, and raw materials. A weak yen makes those imports more expensive. How does that reach Americans? Japan is one of America's largest trading partners. Currency changes can alter the prices of Japanese cars, electronics, and machinery. A stronger yen can make Japanese products more expensive for American buyers, but it can also make American products cheaper for Japanese consumers, potentially helping U.S. exporters. The larger risk is the bond market. If Japan protects its currency by selling American debt, yields could rise here. Even a small increase in federal borrowing costs because it becomes expensive when the United States has tens of trillions of dollars in debt. So more federal money must then go toward interest instead of programs, infrastructure, or tax reductions. This also explains part of the interest in Bitcoin, gold, and silver. Governments can create liquidity. They can change interest rates. They can buy currencies and coordinate exchange rates. Bitcoin's maximum supply is programmed at 20 million coins. Bitcoin's maximum supply is programmed at 21 million coins. Gold and silver supplies cannot be expanded by a government announcement. Those assets can still crash. They are not guaranteed protection against inflation. And many cryptocurrencies do not have Bitcoin supply limit, but people buy them because they want some of their wealth outside a monetary system controlled by governments and central banks. So when we see this type of currency manipulation, this type of intervention, this is why people flock to gold and silver. This is why people buy Bitcoin, because they don't want the government intervening for whatever reasons that they have. They can easily inflate or devalue a currency anytime they want. The American taxpayer is not simply giving Japan free money in this operation, though. We are taking a currency risk and providing financial support because Japan holds an enormous amount of our debt. That tells you how dependent the two countries have become on each other. Japan needs America to help stabilize the yen. America needs Japan to keep owning treasury securities. If this intervention works, it may help prevent higher American interest rates. If it fails, the United States could lose money on the yen, and Japan may eventually face the same decision again. Historically, this does not work out. When you see this type of currency intervention, it's only a matter of time, which means this unraveling is inevitable. So the US might step in again and buy $50 billion worth of yen. We could also raise interest rates and damage our own economy. And then on the other side, Japan could start selling American debt. That is how currency intervention thousands of miles away can reach an American taxpayer. So it's like we had to step in because it would have been to our own detriment had they started selling our securities. Now, you may never own a single yen, but Japan owns part of America's debt, and that means its currency problem can quickly become our interest rate problem. So did the US government do the right thing by stepping in here? In all likelihood, they did. Because without it, we probably would have seen interest rates rise. All right, next topic. Let's go to India. 21 students died here. They died because they commit suicide because of an exam. More than 2 million students showed up to take one exam that could determine whether they become a doctor or not. Then investigators said the paper had been leaked. The results were canceled, and millions of students who thought they were finally done were told that they had to study all over again while authorities investigated what happened. Now, this is why you saw that scale of protest in India. And this is one of the students that took her own life. Let's get to some footage here.
As New Delhi broils with student protests, a family mourns its loss. The idea of retaking one of India's most competitive exams was so dreadful for Pradeep Kumar that the pressure on the 22-year-old became unbearable. Pradeep had dreamed of becoming a doctor. To see that dream realized, his father, a farmer, sold off land and took out a bank loan to help cover the costs of his son's prep for a national entrance exam for med school. More than 2 million aspiring medical students sat for the exam, called the National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test, or NEET. But in the middle of May, the government ordered a retest after canceling the results of the first exam amid allegations of paper leaks, and days later, Pradeep Kumar died by suicide. His mother said Pradeep thought there was already too much debt burden on his father. He worked hard for the test. Rather than take it again, she said, he just decided to die. Reuters interviewed families of 3 students who said the cancellation of the original examination and uncertainty over the retest contributed to their children's deaths. Student suicides have become a rallying point for thousands of young protesters demanding accountability from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government.
So the education minister did step down, but was that enough here? I mean, children took their own lives because this test was so daunting. There are only about 137,000 seats available across India. So before anyone even cheats, more than 90% of the students already know that they aren't going to get a seat. But over 2 million take the test. Now you add in the alleged paper leak, you add in the uncertainty that they have to retake the test, you add in the possibility that someone bought the questions while everyone else spent years earning their scores, spending thousands of dollars. And how would you feel? Of course, you wouldn't trust the results. The system clearly isn't fair. And then you have the human cost. So 21 students died by suicide. 21 families lost a son or a daughter over an exam that was supposed to create an opportunity. So now we have to ask, how much pressure has to exist for an entrance exam to become a matter of life and death? Should one test carry that much weight? Should one morning determine the future of millions of students? I mean, what happens if you're sick that day or you have a panic attack? Now, of course, the outrage spread across India. Students protested, families demanded answers, authorities arrested suspects, opened criminal investigations, and the government introduced tougher anti-cheating laws while promising reforms to restore confidence in the exam system. But maybe the biggest question isn't who leaked the exam. Maybe it's why a system can place so much pressure on millions of young people that one canceled test can shake an entire country. Because if education is supposed to reward hard work, people have to believe that hard work is enough. And it's truly a travesty. I mean, the fact that it took weeks for the education minister to actually step down speaks volumes of the corruption and, I think, lack of accountability in India. It's just a shame. And again, students were this overwhelmed that they thought to commit suicide. It's just a travesty. All right, next topic. Okay, New York City renews the $1.86 billion homeless hotel contract. This is over 3 years. 85,000 plus people are sheltered nightly. And they are renewing the emergency hotel contract. Now, this is extremely controversial because most people are going to say, why? Why my money? Right? Why am I paying for the homeless? Are they truly homeless? Do they truly have mental problems? Well, I don't know. They're living in the street, right? So that's one thing. And I know there's been interviews by various media stations that go out there and they're talking to these homeless people and they're making them look foolish, or they're making them look like, hey, maybe they're actually able-bodied. But are they? They're choosing to live in the street. They're choosing to sleep in the cold or the heat. They are choosing discomfort over comfort. And they're balancing the fact that if they don't work, they have to live this life. But if they do work, they have to succumb to the rat race. So they are making a choice. And yes, many of them have mental problems. Now, I know I'm probably tugging at your heartstrings because once we mention mental health, that hits home for everyone. It's like cancer. But what do we do about this situation? Because it's so much easier to just say something to the effect of, hey, not on my dollar, not on my dime. I don't want to pay for these people to live out on the street, dirty our streets. They should go bite the bullet like everyone else. I can understand both sides of the argument. Now, the city says it shelters more than 85,000 people every single night. And because of New York's right to shelter law, it generally can't just tell homeless people, sorry, we're full. So that raises the first question. Why does New York have to provide shelter at all? Back in the early 1980s, advocates sued the city after homeless people were left sleeping on the streets. The courts ruled that New York had an obligation to provide emergency shelter, and since then, New York has been one of the few major cities in America with a legal right to shelter. That doesn't mean every homeless person automatically gets a free hotel room. It means that if someone qualifies under the city's emergency shelter rules, New York generally has to provide them with a place to stay. So then comes the next question: why hotels? The city's answer is that there are the city's answer is that there are simply the city's answer is that there are simply the city's answer is that there simply aren't enough traditional shelters. Hotels became overflow space during COVID and the migrant crisis, and officials say they still need that capacity while the shelter system remains under pressure. But that leads to the next question: is this the best use of taxpayer money? We're talking about up to $1.86 billion over 3 years. Could that money build permanent housing instead? Expand mental health treatment? Create more addiction recovery programs? Maybe I just don't want to spend this amount of money on the homeless, on migrants. Maybe I can understand both sides of the argument. What do? Do you just leave them on the street? I mean, we technically can't do that because we have laws written that we need to follow. But of course, those projects take years. And the city still has to find beds for people tonight. So yes, we could build more permanent shelters instead of using high-priced hotels. But now let's talk about who's actually in the shelter system. Not everyone is homeless for the same reason. Some people lost a job. Some families simply can't afford New York rent. Some are veterans. Some struggle with addiction. Others suffer from severe mental illness. Those aren't the same problems. So should they all receive the same solution? Maybe someone needs temporary housing. Maybe someone needs psychiatric care, job training. Maybe they just need an affordable apartment. Then comes the question every taxpayer eventually asks: who should be paying for all of this? Should it be New York City? Should New York State contribute more? Should the federal government pay more? Or is this simply the cost of living in a city that guarantees shelter? Now, what do you want done here? Because it's very easy to blame the homeless. It's very easy to blame the mayor. This is a New York law, and maybe we should have a referendum on it as New York City residents. Do we want to keep this right to shelter law in place? I'm not sure. And I'll be honest with you, it infuriates me. And this hits close to home because personally, I've seen homelessness in my family. And I don't know what to do. I mean, how do you react to a situation like that? Do you just let the person be homeless? I think that's our first instinct. Let the person be homeless. That's their choice. But they clearly have mental issues, else they probably wouldn't choose to sleep on the street. So what do we do with these people? Do we show compassion and give them a place to live? I mean, $1.86 billion for 85,000 people over 3 years doesn't seem like much, to be honest. If you actually break out the numbers, it's really not that much money. I think it's like $20,000 a person. And that's up to 1.86 billion. Doesn't mean that we'll spend the full amount. Maybe we will. I think everyone agrees homelessness is a problem. The disagreement is over who's responsible for solving it. And then, of course, who's responsible for paying for it. I mean, what do we do with the people that have mental issues? Do we just throw them in psychiatric wards? Do we just say, hey, look, you can choose to be homeless, but you got to do it on some barren land. You can't do it in New York City. Maybe you can't do it within the confines of the city. I don't know what the answer is. Personally, I don't like seeing it. I think it makes for a more dangerous atmosphere because, of course, they have mental issues, and I think people feel unsafe, especially children. So I'm kind of mixed on it. Do I just want to extinguish all homeless people? No. It does piss me off that they're kind of outcast in society, that they sit outside of our labor force, and they're essentially not fighting the same battles that we have to fight, right? We have to earn our keep every day. I got to fucking work every day. That's how it goes. It's very hard not to look at a homeless person and to tell them to do the same. So I don't know what the equation is here, but I mean, part of this is enablement. If we give these people this money, what happens? Do they take advantage of the system? What is our responsibility here as New Yorkers, as American citizens, as global citizens? Should we be providing this financial assistance? Or should we be telling these people, hey, you have to go earn your keep? Everybody else is working just as hard. And that's just the way the system works. I mean, come on now. At this point, I'm saying 2 + 2 is 4. I'm just telling you how everyday society works. So I don't know the answer here. But I know that nobody wants people sleeping on the streets, in the cold, in the rain, in the heat. And nobody wants someone suffering from severe mental illness to be abandoned. But if taxpayers are spending up to $1.86 billion, they also want to know whether this system is actually helping people get back on their feet, or whether New York is spending billions of dollars perpetuating it. Are we just managing homelessness, or are we reducing it? Because we should be moving towards zero, right? We should be trying to stop people from being homeless. Give them resources in which they can work, they can provide a benefit to society, they can improve their own lives. That's got to happen here. Because I think there's no such thing as a free lunch. And if you give out free money like this, ultimately, someone's paying for it. It's taxpayers. We get a lower quality city because we're spending money on programs like this. So what I really want to hear about is how we're reducing homelessness, not just managing it from day to day. All right, next topic. Okay, so Marco Rubio said, hold on. Okay, so Marco Rubio said, and this is our Secretary of State, if you criticize Israel, you will not be granted a visa for the United States. Of course, nothing is mentioned if people criticize the US. Now here's the video.
Under President Trump, the United States will stand with the Jewish people. We have implemented a vigorous new visa policy that will prevent foreign nationals from coming to the United States to foment hatred against our Jewish community. We are holding international organizations and nations accountable for rhetoric against Israel that resurfaces in the manifesto of monsters, like Iran and Sarah's killer. But we do see an eventual light at the end of this long tunnel of suffering. One can imagine a Middle East in which the Abraham Accords eventually reign. So thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Nobody
Israel
doesn't want peace. But for him to come out and be this blatant, this direct, I mean, who are we here? And look at some of the comments. United Slaves of Israel. I mean, everything is just ridiculing Marco Rubio. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you are. Not allowed. Look at who, if you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. This comes from Voltaire. America first, but Israel firstest. Here's a video of J.D. Vance in 2016 versus 2022.
Bad. Trump is a really bad candidate, and frankly, I think a really bad person.
The simple fact is, he's the best president of my lifetime.
And you know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. To President Trump, you saved the world. God bless you.
And Donald is indicating the fear that keeps him up at night when he lashes out with anger. Donald, you're a sniveling coward.
What I like best about President Trump is his courage and fearlessness.
There is no way we are going to allow a con artist to take over the conservative movement, and Donald Trump is a con artist. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well.
Trump is a really bad candidate.
Well, that's what happens when, you know, you're just trying to make money. I mean, that's them just pandering to their boss. So this video is discussing a new American visa policy. And that's Marco Rubio, right? And that visa policy is, we have implemented a vigorous new visa policy that will prevent foreign nationals from coming to the United States to foment hatred against our Jewish community. That is the stated policy. Denying visas to foreign nationals, the administration believes, are entering the country to promote anti-Semitism, not automatically denying everyone who criticizes Israel. But I'll tell you right now, I have this show, and I'm not anti-Semitic, but I do not agree with what Israel is doing today in their region. But Rubio's surrounding comments explain why people are concerned about where that boundary sits. Because honestly, me, with the show, I don't know that if I leave the country, I don't know if I'll just be let back in, because they are checking social media. They know who's leaving when, they know when you're coming back, and they can just hold you at the airport, question you, detain you. Who cares about the law? You think this country gives a shit about the law? Since when? Since when did we actually uphold our Constitution? The Supreme Court, the appeals courts, the lower courts, our judicial system has the right to interpret the law any way they see fit. That's why Roe v. Wade was overturned. That's why you're seeing gay rights being rescinded. That's why you're seeing tariffs being applied with no legislative action. Now, in the same speech, Rubio argued that there can be no clear separation between hatred of Israel and hatred of Jewish people. Why? Why? People hate what Israel is doing. We should not hate the Jewish. Those two are totally separate categories. Hating the country and hating its leadership for what they're doing, disagreeing with what they're doing, to put it lightly, is totally separate from hating a religion. One is a religion, one is a country. The country is taking actions that has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. Now, people can help bolster their arguments and say, well, it's the Jewish people doing it, therefore it's the Jews, but that does not hold any weight. That does not make any sense. You're categorically denying an entire group of people based on their religion. It doesn't make sense. And if you walk around New York City or any other city and you meet Jewish people, they're as nice as the next person. It has nothing to do with the disagreement or the rebuttal against the Israeli argument in that region. Them not allowing a two-state solution, them bombing Syria, them bombing Jordan, them bombing Lebanon, them bombing Iran. That's what we disagree with. Now, Rubio connected calls to boycott Israel with boycotting Jewish neighbors and connected calls for Israel's destruction with the destruction of the Jewish people. Now, that raises an important distinction because criticizing an Israeli government decision is not necessarily anti-Semitism. Is it? Is it? Yes or no? And I don't give a shit what the US government says. It's not. It's not. Anti-Semitism is saying, hey, I don't like Semites. And for all intents and purposes, I don't like Jewish people. That's what that is saying. Anti-Semitism. We are saying we don't agree with Israel. Don't conflate the two, Marco Rubio, because that's what he's doing here. And he's saying, if you hate Israel, then you hate Jewish people. And if you hate either one, we're not going to allow you into this country. And I believe that the ramifications are far more severe. I mean, ICE is arresting American citizens, right? We've seen it time and time again. Do you actually feel safe if you've criticized Israel? I mean, what are we talking about? This is Orwellian at this point. This is 1984. I can't say what I want to say. There is no freedom of speech in this country anymore. Not under this administration. Supporting Palestinians is not necessarily support for Hamas. But again, people will conflate the two. Of course, we can't advocate violence against Jewish people. We can't praise a terrorist organization. And we certainly can't target anyone because they're Jewish. If you're doing those things, then yes, I would think you would be denied a visa. But who decides which category a person falls into? For people outside the United States applying for admission, a visa is not an automatic right. American law gives the executive branch broad authority to deny visas on security, terrorism, and foreign policy grounds. Visa decisions made overseas are also extremely difficult to challenge in an American court. It's virtually impossible. So if you said something anti-Israel and you're trying to come here from, I don't know, India or China, then what? Are you automatically denied a visa? What does that say for Americans? If you're denying foreigners, what does that say about American citizens within our own borders? The administration has used that authority beyond this one speech. In 2025, the State Department expanded social media screening and ordered additional reviews involving student applicants, people connected to Gaza, and foreign nationals suspected of supporting terrorist activity. So all of those college protests that were supporting Palestine, yeah, they were suspected of supporting terrorist activity. Why? Because they were defaming Israel. Not the Jews, but Israel. Why is our administration having a hard time distinguishing the two? Rubio also said that more than 300 visas had been revoked during the administration's crackdown on foreign students involved in pro-Palestinian campus activism. The constitutional situation changes once someone is physically inside the United States. The First Amendment generally protects people in this country regardless of citizenship or immigration status, but immigration authorities may still try to revoke a visa or pursue removal under separate immigration powers, which can lead to court challenges. The actual issue here is that the administration is using visa authority to screen and remove certain foreign nationals over anti-Semitism, terrorism concerns, and activity connected to pro-Palestinian movements. And the government has not established a universally accepted line separating protected political criticism from the conduct it intends to punish. So define the problem here. Can we not criticize Israel? That's what the government is saying. That's what Marco Rubio just said in this video. No matter how you want to interpret this, you cannot criticize Israel. You cannot criticize the Jewish religion. I agree with the latter. You can criticize whatever the hell you want. We have freedom of speech, last time I checked. But if you criticize Israel, it's the same thing as being anti-Semitic. That is what the U.S. government is telling you. That's a problem. Thank you for watching. See you next time.